Good minutes.
I actually like these better because you kind of really have no idea where it's going to push you.
Right. It's going to be addicting doing this watch.
Right. It's going to be like when Pokemon Go came out. I'm surprised this isn't a big thing. Like,
not yet anyways. I bet you a lot of people don't know about it yet, but it's starting to come up in the videos though, for the scary videos.
yeah.
So I'm wondering. We're at a half a tank. I'm excited though. It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Better than police chasing sometimes. Seems like we go in circles in the hood. That's pretty much all it does. But which is not bad, but it's fun.
It isn't. We love driving and just going around, so this is perfect. I feel bad that you drive all the time, but I know that you like it.
Yeah, I like it. It's fun. It's fun.
Little chickpea that was sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad about her sometimes too, because I know she likes laying on her side.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what she gets pissed about. It's like, damn it,
Yeah.
can't move.
Yep. I
That's-
never like laying on my back either. Like,
Yeah. No, like we're sending this on now. It's
yeah,
random.
it's random. We couldn't find it.
Kind of crazy how much moon they have. You know, it's not half of their customers, like as far as like people watching their channel, because they took like because of all the cops stuff going on right now. That's why they took it off.
So that's probably why people stopped watching the protesting. That's crazy.
Right.
Is it still on YouTube?
Yeah. Yep. They're just looking at the damn cars.
No, you're fine. Watch the picture.
Yeah.
Have you been through here before?
Yeah. This is Point Place.
This is?
Yeah. I used to party at one of these houses. It used to be Omar's house. I'll show you real quick. Yeah, the second house in.
And?
Yep. He used to live there, him and Mary. They always used to have get-togethers over here. Yeah, that at the end of this street was one of my bus stops. You could get off right there. Let's turn. Ride line ask. Nice ask, whatever. Hopefully. Yeah, Parker used to live over here. So did, I forget, what's his name? I used to live with him too. Forget his name. I mean, yeah, this is where I used to take Emily trick-or-treating.
Oh, okay.
Every year, like we'd just walk back and forth, and then we'd hit the back of the point, like towards the end of it. Okay, this is weird. It's that backyard.
That backyard?
Yeah. It's telling us to go there.
What's in it?
It's a whatchamacallit? It's a garden. 605. 102. That backyard right there.
Huh.
You've been wanting to do gardens.
True. They love flowers.
Maybe it's like God telling us, like, we need to get round roads.
Yes, please. Just make it happen.
It's something we've always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Nice. That's interesting. You could just...
here, go back to the format. No? Void?
I guess there are different types. I don't really understand them or what they mean. It's putting us in the lake.
Go here. 5 minutes away. Maybe somebody's going to work. No, it's 1:14 in the morning. I know. If we had a canoe, it would be fun to go out there right now.
Yeah.
I'd put her on my back. We could go. You seen my bag?
Oh yeah, it stopped. Wonder why it... What? Oh well.
Simeon Smith was one of the early settlers of New Hampshire in 1772. He built a farm there on the border between Wentworth and Warren and held a local office. By trade, he was a tailor, but like a lot of men of that decade, he fought with the Continental Army. It's easy to look back at Simeon Smith as the typical pioneer from the late 1700s. He was patriotic and a stereotypical New Englander, for sure. But few people in town liked him. Why, you might ask? Because Simeon Smith, according to the local stories, was a sorcerer. It was said that Simeon would saddle and bridle a random neighbor and then ride them all over the countryside, just to spite them. When women were having trouble churning butter and it simply wouldn't work, it was because, they said, Simeon Smith was in the churn. If children in town behaved badly, it was because he had bewitched them. He could become as small as a gnat and move through the keyholes of your locked doors. He could become larger than a giant and would stalk through the forest at night. Oh, so they said. Stories like these were common in early America. They were a mixture of fact and fiction, of historical truths and hysterical superstition. In an effort to explain the unexplainable, sometimes neighbors and prominent figures were thrown under the proverbial bus. The era between the mid-15th and late 16th centuries was precarious for many people. This wasn't the age of Harry Potter. Witchcraft wasn't something that was spoken of lightly or with a sense of wonder and excitement. It caused fear ruined lives. They made good people do bad things, all in the name of superstition. I'm Aaron Mankey, and
Oh,
this
the house of meats
is
here?
Lore.
Yeah, yep.
Nice.
Ian used to work there. So did a lot of us.
Superstition was common in the late 1600s. If something odd or unexplainable happened, the automatic
I've always
response
wanted to
from
harp
most
in
people
there.
was to blame the supernatural.
But I don't know how you get them.
But most scholars agree that these beliefs were merely excuses to help people deal with neighbors
That house
and
is
family
really cool for
members
the
that
longest
they
time.
didn't
I
care
think
for.
it's still sitting vacant
If you
to
didn't
this
like
day.
somebody,
He was a big Browns
common
fan.
to accuse them of witchcraft. In the most famous historical example of this, the witch trials of Salem, Massachusetts, we can see a clear pattern in the events. Many of those accused of being witches were wealthy and held religious beliefs that were different from their accusers. Once a suspect was convicted, their estate would be confiscated by the court. And in a community that was known for property disputes, grazing rights, and religious arguments, that became a recipe for disaster. What happened in Salem happened elsewhere, all around New England, just on a smaller scale.
That's going to be at Harold's
Neighbors
house
accused
right there.
neighbors constantly. Stories
That's
were told,
weird. That's at his dad's
lies
house.
were
Oh,
ruined.
really?
It
Yeah.
was the way of things,
What'd you
I
wish for?
suppose. Not ideal,
What do you
but
mean?
not
Like when you
uncommon
set your
either.
intention, what did you think about?
In
Beauty.
one story from
Beauty?
Exeter, Rhode Island, a farmer was
Well, it is-
said to
it
have
wants
been
you to go into
carting
the water,
over to
though.
market when a
So
cat
that's-
ran across the road. For some unknown
weird.
I
reason,
wanted to see
the farmer
something beautiful.
immediately jumped to the
The water.
conclusion that the cat was
I
actually
mean, not that you're not
a
beautiful, but I mean,
woman
scenery, you know?
who he insisted was a witch.
That's,
She had
that's
transformed
Harold's
herself into
dad's
a cat
house.
in order to meddle in his business.
It's weird. That's really
Now, this
weird.
farmer was fast on his feet.
That is weird.
Not only did he see the cat running and then make the connection to his witchy neighbor, but he managed to pull out his gun.
Oh my God,
He
that
was
is
said to have fired
crazy.
a silver bullet at the cat,
Lake Erie.
something well
That's
known
where
at the time to
Harold,
be effective against
Sarah
witches,
lives there now. Harold's
and struck
sister.
his target.
Yeah,
At
I
that
don't
very
even know if his
moment,
dad's
according
still
to the
alive.
story, the suspected witch fell in her own home, breaking her hip. In the town of Salem, New Hampshire, a man
Harold's
decided
up.
that his cow
He's probably
looked
playing
strangely
Xbox right
different
now.
from how he remembered, and he made the most logical conclusion he was
Yep.
capable of.
He's up.
His neighbor was a sorcerer, and the man had bewitched his cow. The folklore dictated the
I
solution.
don't know how many times I
He
cleaned
cut
out
off
that
the
yard.
cow's ears and tail, and then burned them. Soon after, the
Bunch.
farmer's neighbor was found dead, victim of a house fire.
The light's so bright.
In West Newbury, Vermont, a farmer had settled in for the evening beside his fireplace. Perhaps he was enjoying something alcoholic and refreshing, or maybe he was trying to read a book. While he was there, he witnessed what he called spectral shapes that danced and moved in the flames. This farmer immediately thought of one particular woman in town, a woman known to be a witch, and he took some tallow and beeswax and sculpted a careful likeness of her. Then, taking a branch from a thorn bush, he pierced this little figurine before tossing it into the fire. At the same time, across town, the suspected witch apparently tripped on her own stairs and broke her neck.
Damn.
Back in the town of Wentworth, our friend Simeon Smith received his own fair share of retribution. It was said that a local boy named Caleb Merrill was struck deaf by the sorcerer. After that, he began acting strange, running up the sides of the house like a squirrel and writhing in agony. After some trial and error, Caleb's parents put the perfect combination of ingredients into a witch bottle, a sort of homemade talisman designed to combat sorcery. They buried the bottle beneath their hearth, and soon after, the town was burying Simeon Smith. These stories of neighborhood witches and the ways in which the good citizens of the towns defeated them were common all across New England. They border on the cruel and cast these people, often simply the poor or non-religious among them, in a horrible light.
They're so cute.
They
For
are.
many people, suspicion was a convenient excuse to hate your neighbor and wish them ill. In no other place was that attitude more pronounced, more dominant, and more extreme than the town of Hadley, Massachusetts. In Salem, the townspeople worked within the legal system. In Hadley, however, the people took matters into their own hands, and the results were horrifying. When Philip Smith was dying in 1684, the town went looking for him.
You had the same idea I had.
It was hard to blame them.
What,
Smith
scooted
was
up
a
all the way?
model citizen and leader in the community. He had been a deacon of the church, a member of the general court, a county court justice, and a town selectman. He was respected, trusted, and maybe even well loved. The sole suspect in the crime was an old woman named Mary Webster. She and her husband were poor. They lived in a tiny house in the middle of some of the pasture land outside of town. Sometimes, when things got tough, they even needed assistance from the town. Colonial-era welfare, so to speak.
Do you need assistance?
It was easy to blame Mary Webster. She and Smith had not been on the best of terms, although few people in town were on good terms with her. She was cranky, you see. Accounts of the events include the almost sarcastic comment that her already poor temper had not been helped by poverty. She was a sour and spiteful woman, and she had a tendency to shoot her mouth off. A lot. Her fierce temper and stinging tongue had earned her a reputation as the town witch. Apparently, she wasn't much of a churchgoer, and that did little to help her case. But the clincher was that she had just gotten back from Boston.
No, you're fine. This thing does it
Why?
all the time.
Well, she'd been on trial there for witchcraft. She'd been taken to Boston in chains sometime in late April of 1683. Mary, an old woman with a foul mouth, had been accused of having congress with the devil, of bearing his children and suckling them. These children looked like black cats, they said.
What?
She had strange markings on her body, they said. It was conclusive and obvious, they said. There were other stories of Mary Webster.
The house has been
They said that when teams of cattle were driven
That one,
toward
it
her
would
property,
be cute if it got fixed
they would
up.
panic and bolt
It's got
in the opposite direction.
so
Oh.
They claimed that when it
probably why they
happened,
don't let anybody
the man
live
would
there.
approach the
Yeah.
house
Yeah, the
and threaten to
paneling
whip
on
her.
it.
Yeah.
That's why.
And only then would she.
I mean, I
let
don't
the
think
animals
that's
pass.
why, but be nice
It
to
could
live
be
in.
because they would
A
have
load
to
of hay
remove it,
toppled
and that
over
would be
near her
a
home.
process.
The driver of the wagon went to Mary's house,
How would you even
went
begin to
inside,
remove something?
and was about to
I
give
don't
her a
know.
piece of his
I don't know
mind
how
when
they
the
do
car
it. I know there's a way to
magically
do it. I
righted
just
itself.
don't know what
Or
they do.
so they say. Another story tells how she entered the home of some local parents, and when she set eyes on the infant in the cradle, the baby
I just wanna
levitated
do
out
something
and
real
touched
quick.
the ceiling. Not once, but 3 times. There's even a story about some people who were inside one evening, boiling water and getting ready for dinner. All of a sudden, a live chicken came down the chimney and landed in the pot, only to escape from the house moments later.
That's cool.
The next day, it was discovered that Mary herself had been scalded that night, though she wasn't telling people how it happened. And so Mary was transported 100 miles to Boston, along with a sheaf of those eyewitness accounts that had been written by her accusers, and
A lot
brought
of people
before
got
a
their
judge
votes
and
out,
jury.
man.
The jury
Yeah.
listened. They read those papers. They looked everything over and did their best as impartial,
I've seen a
rational
boat burn in
individuals.
that
They discussed it
thing
amongst
caught on
themselves.
fire.
And when they returned
The
to the court,
Fire department had to run a hose
Mary Webster.
from the lake there.
Yeah.
They had to park a fire truck and
Maybe they
suck out
pissed
the
off
water
the
out of
neighbors.
the, so that way
Maybe
they could put it
thought
out.
they were
Oh, wow.
finally done
Yep.
with her when she had been taken away. I can almost imagine their surprise when she rode back into town, smile on her face.
Toledo
Fire.
Toledo Fire was in it, and then Erie Township
But when
over there
Philip Smith,
helped out with it.
her old adversary in Hadley, took sick just a few months after her return, that newly won freedom looked like it might be in jeopardy.
That place changed a lot. Wasn't always
The
open.
winter after Mary's return from Boston, Philip Smith began to look ill. The people of Hadley didn't know what the cause was at first. What they did know was that Smith was in a bad way. He had frequent seizures, and seemed delirious most of the time. The people caring for him, his family, friends, and nurses, were all deeply concerned. Whatever it was that he was suffering from, it didn't appear to be normal. In fact, it appeared to be the work of the devil. What else could possibly cause a man to suffer fits and scream and babble for hours in an unknown language? When Smith could be understood, he cried out that someone was pricking his arm with nails, hundreds of them, over and over, painfully. His nurses looked for the nails, but they never found anything that could have been causing pain. He claimed a woman was in the room with him. Some of the young men in town had a theory, though. They had been talking about it for a while, and they decided they needed to give it a test. You see, they thought Mary Webster was behind the man's illness. In their minds, there was only one way to find
I
out.
wonder if that's why they call it Webster's Dictionary.
One of the men stayed with
Right.
Smith while the others went to Mary's home. 3 or 4 times, he knocked on her door and bothered her, thinking that if she was indeed casting a spell over Smith, this would break her concentration. When they returned, the man who had been tasked with watching over Smith claimed that the sick man was at ease 3 or 4 times while they were gone. There were other things they noticed. The small pot of medicines that had been laid out for Smith were mysteriously empty, as if someone were stealing their contents. They frequently heard scratching beneath the man's bed. Some of the men claimed to have seen fire on the bed, but when they began to talk about it, it would vanish. The details of the events surrounding Philip Smith's illness are ripe with superstition and fear. These young men even claimed that something as large as a cat would stir under the covers near the sick man, but whenever they tried to capture it, it would slip away. Others said that the bed would shake enough to make their teeth rattle. All of this was just too much for them. Convinced that they knew who was causing Smith's illness, the group of young men returned
Very
to the
careful
home
over here. This is Shoreland.
This time, though, they
They're
had
like
more than
Oregon,
disturbing her peace
except for even
on their
worse.
mind. They dragged Mary from her home and out